Welcome back, historians. Europe gets ready to explore. In the 1400s and 1500s, countries in Western Europe began exploring the world. They wanted spices, silk, and other goods from Asia. Political change in the countries between Europe and Asia made it more difficult and expensive to trade goods by land. If European traders could not get there by land, maybe they could get there by sea. Their ships, however, were not equipped to travel the Atlantic Ocean. By the 1400s, they had the tools they needed. From the Arabs, they learned about the astrolabe and the compass. The astrolabe was an ancient Greek tool used to find latitude. The compass was a tool that sailors used to figure out which direction they were going. European shipbuilders made better ships. They used sails invented by the Arabs that were shaped like triangles. These sails let a ship go in any direction. No longer did they have to go just where the wind blew. By the 1400s, many people in Europe knew the world was round. However, they had maps of only Europe and the Mediterranean region. Sailors began to study ancient maps and books. A Greek geographer named Claudius Ptolemy had drawn maps of the world. He wrote down the latitude and longitude of over 8,000 places. Europeans began studying his maps. Sailors and explorers were able to get copies of the maps because of the invention of the printing press. Sailors also studied the works of an Arab geographer named Al-Idrisi. Europeans learned about the Indian Ocean. They decided that sailing around Africa was the best way to get to Asia. Even though the Europeans had new tools, exploration was still dangerous and costly. During this time, towns and trade also grew. This made Europe's government stronger. By the 1400s, 4 kingdoms were looking for a sea route to Asia. All of them had ports on the Atlantic Ocean. The race was on between England, Portugal, Spain, and France. Early voyages of discovery. In the early 1400s, England and France were still fighting each other, and Spain was battling the Muslims. Portugal was free to lead the way to explore new trade routes to Asia. Prince Henry of Portugal paid for many voyages of exploration. About 1420, his sailors traveled along Africa's west coast. They made maps of what they found. In 1488, Bartolomeu Dias reached the southern tip of Africa. 9 years later, Vasco da Gama rounded the tip of Africa. He raced across the Indian Ocean to the southwest coast of India. He had found a water route to East Asia. An Italian navigator then came up with a different plan to get to Asia. His name was Christopher Columbus. He decided to sail west, not east, across the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus had 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Nina, and the Pinta. They left Spain in 1492 and headed west. After many weeks, they finally saw land. Columbus thought he was in Asia. He did not realize he was in the Americas. He made several more trips. He brought conquistadors, or Spanish soldier explorers, with him to conquer the people of the new lands. Europeans eventually realized they had found new continents. The English heard about Columbus's trip. They also wanted to find a route to Asia. In 1497, John Cabot headed across the Atlantic Ocean. Cabot came to the coast of Canada. He did not find a path to Asia. Cabot was lost at sea on his second trip. He was never heard from again. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan sailed south along the coast of South America. He found a way around the continent. He then went west. His sailors almost starved. After 4 months at sea, they reached the present-day Philippines. There, Magellan died in a battle between local groups. His crew then went west across the Indian Ocean. They went around Africa and back to Spain. They were the first known people to circumnavigate, or sail around, the world. In 1524, France sent Giovanni da Verrazzano to find a northern route to Asia. He drew maps of the east coast of America, but he did not find a way to Asia. 10 years later, Jacques Cartier entered the St. Lawrence River. He claimed much of eastern Canada for France. After these early trips, France stopped exploring for a time. By the mid-1500s, France and England were involved in religious conflicts and civil wars. It wasn't until the early 1600s that these countries began exploring again. Spain and Portugal had territories in South America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. So France and England began to establish their colonies in North America. The Spanish conquer Mexico. Poor Spanish nobles such as 19-year-old Hernán Cortés were inspired by Christopher Columbus. They wanted to become conquistadors and travel to the Americas to search for riches. By 1519, Cortés was in Mexico and hoping to find gold. He brought about 500 soldiers, 16 horses, 14 cannons, and a few dogs. How could such a small number of soldiers conquer the huge Aztec Empire that ruled most of Mexico? Cortés used his horses and guns to scare Native Americans. He forced thousands of them to surrender. He also found another weapon. It was a Maya woman named Malintzin. She spoke to Cortés through a translator who knew the Mayan language and Spanish. Malintzin told Cortés that many Native Americans were angry with their Aztec rulers. She believed they would fight with Cortés against the Aztec. Malintzin helped Cortés find allies, or helpers, among the Native Americans. Another factor that helped was invisible germs and sicknesses. Measles, smallpox, and other diseases killed more Aztec people than Spanish swords. The Spaniards traveled hundreds of miles to the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. Spies told the Aztec leader, Montezuma, about the Spaniards' every move. The Aztec believed in a god named Quetzalcoatl. According to legend, this god with light skin had sailed away long ago. He promised to come back someday to take back his land. Montezuma was afraid that Cortés was this god coming home. So Montezuma did not want to attack the Spanish right away. As Cortés marched closer, Montezuma decided to attack the troops. Cortés heard about the planned ambush. In November 1519, the soldiers marched into the Aztec capital. They took control of the city. Cortés took Montezuma hostage, or prisoner. He then told the Aztec to stop sacrificing people. Cortés made the Aztec people angry. They fought back. The Spanish killed thousands of Aztec. However, there were more Aztec than Spanish soldiers. The Spanish had to fight their way out of the city. They moved into the hills with their allies. Cortés got ready for a second attack. Smallpox broke out in the city. Many Aztec died and the rest were weak. They were no match for Cortés. In June 1521, the Spanish destroyed the Aztec capital. Spain conquers Peru. In 1513, Vasco Núñez de Balboa led his soldiers across the mountains of present-day Panama. He was looking for a great empire filled with gold. Balboa found a sea, known today as the Pacific Ocean, but he never found the Golden Empire. Francisco Pizarro was one of Balboa's soldiers. The empire that Pizarro wanted to find was the Inca Empire. By the 1530s, the Inca Empire had become weak. Even so, the Inca were not afraid of Pizarro. Pizarro had only 168 soldiers, 1 cannon, and 27 horses compared to the Incas' 30,000 warriors. Pizarro, too, was unafraid. In late 1532, Pizarro made a bold plan. The Spanish invited the Inca ruler, Atahualpa, to a meeting. He agreed to come. However, he made the mistake of not bringing his army of 80,000 men. He thought his 4,000 guards would keep him safe. He also thought they would not need any weapons. When they met, Pizarro demanded that the emperor give up his gods. When Atahualpa laughed at this, Pizarro ordered an attack. The Spanish fired into the unarmed Inca crowd. Pizarro then took Atahualpa captive. Atahualpa tried to buy his freedom. He said he would give Pizarro an entire room full of gold and silver. Pizarro accepted the offer but refused to release Atahualpa. He charged the emperor with many crimes. These crimes included planning a rebellion and worshipping false gods. In 1533, a military court found the emperor guilty. Atahualpa was sentenced to death. As a reward, the Spanish king made Pizarro the governor of Peru. Pizarro chose a new emperor of the Inca. The new emperor had to obey Pizarro. Still, the Spanish could not completely control the Inca Empire. Even after Pizarro died, Inca rebels continued to fight the Spanish. However, the conquest of Peru allowed Spanish rule to move into much of South America, settling the Americas. By the 1600s, Spanish settlers were growing sugarcane on large farms called plantations. At first, Native Americans did all the work. Then disease and mistreatment caused most of them to die. Spain brought enslaved Africans to work on the plantations and in the gold and silver mines. The Portuguese also used enslaved Africans to do their hard work in Brazil. The French came to North America to set up fur trading posts. French merchants hired explorer Samuel de Champlain in 1608 to help them get furs. He set up a trading post named Quebec. It became the capital of the colony of New France. In 1682, a French explorer named La Salle followed the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. He named the region Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV. The French in southern Louisiana brought enslaved Africans to grow sugarcane, rice, and tobacco. During the 1600s, the English came to North America for many reasons. Some people wanted to make money. Others wanted religious freedom. Others came because they did not have a job and needed work. England's colonies grew quickly. The Virginia Company established the first English settlement in North America in 1607. It was called Jamestown after King James I. Life in Virginia was very hard. There was not enough to eat. Some people died in the cold winters. Others were killed in fights with the Native Americans. During those first years, the colony made no money. Settlers discovered that tobacco grew well in Virginia's soil. Tobacco became the first cash crop of the English colonies. A cash crop is grown in large amounts to sell and make money. Another European country, the Netherlands, wanted to explore North America. Henry Hudson sailed up the Hudson River and claimed land for the Dutch. In 1621, Dutch traders established a settlement called New Amsterdam. Today it is part of New York City. World trade changes. Europeans came up with the idea of mercantilism. This is a theory that a country's power depends on its wealth. Countries can increase their wealth by owning more gold and silver. In addition to their colonies in North America, Europeans set up trading posts and colonies in Asia. In the 1600s, Europeans started doing business a new way, called the Commercial Revolution. Commerce is the buying and selling of goods in large amounts over long distances. Merchants needed a lot of money to trade goods far away. They had to buy and store a large amount of goods and ship them over land and sea. This new business created entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs invest, or put money, into a business. The goal is to make money. Many projects were so large that a group of entrepreneurs had to work together. They would form a joint stock company. This is a business that many people can invest in by buying shares, or stocks, of the company. By owning stocks, investors share the expenses, the risks, and the profits. Some merchants believed that artisans charged too much for their goods and took too long to make them. They created the cottage industry. This is when merchants hire people who work from their homes. A global exchange. Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas changed through trading. The world traded people, goods, tools, ideas, and even diseases. This is called the Columbian Exchange, after Christopher Columbus. Corn and potatoes came to Europe from the Americas. Corn was fed to animals. The same amount of land could produce more potatoes than wheat. This fed more people. Tomatoes from America became popular in Italy. Chocolate came from Central America. European and Asian grains such as wheat, oats, barley, rye, and rice were planted in the Americas. Coffee and fruits were brought there, too. Animals were brought from Europe. Chickens changed the diet of people in the Americas. Horses allowed Native Americans to hunt buffalo more efficiently. Europeans took sugarcane from Asia and began growing it in the Caribbean. They moved millions of enslaved Africans to the Americas to plant and harvest the sugarcane. Not everything that passed between Europe and America was good. Europeans gave germs to the Native Americans. Some diseases were deadly and killed millions of people.